How surprised would you be to learn that the Great Reset, that well-known government-backed socialist hellscape about which we hear so much, was not in fact conceived of by the Blofeld-esque Klaus, but was instead a brainchild of sovereign-in-waiting King Charles III.
Our overlords at the World Economic Forum, they are still keen on transforming the world in their image via the Great Reset and the grandly titled Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I have to say, they sound somewhat buoyant over how things are progressing thus far. See, right now, the WEF are providing a platform for those pushing a My Carbon initiative.
We have to prepare for a more angry world.
It's essentially a personal carbon social credit system.
This time it's different. No one's going to have a job in the world, and it's just going to be the Davos elite, and we're just going to have a good time, and everyone else is going to be rioting.
That will track everything you do, everything you buy, everything you eat.
We're facing big global challenges. People don't believe that they can make a change, but you really, really can, because you making a change is the only change you can really make. When it times it by 9 billion people, it makes a fundamental difference to the way that we live on this planet.
Now, to understand why the WF are so happy, I'm going to quote directly from their website. There we go. COVID-19 was a test of social responsibility. A huge number of unimaginable restrictions for public health were adopted by billions of citizens across the world. There were numerous examples globally of maintaining social distancing, wearing masks, mass vaccinations, and acceptance of contract tracing applications for public health, which demonstrated the core of individual social responsibility.
Most importantly, we have to promote general social concern.
That's the WF's words. And why wouldn't they be encouraged by that? The world accepted unimaginable restrictions with nary a whimper. Just imagine how that is going to embolden their next PSYOPs project as they attempt to enslave us all.
How thought-provoking.
And they're also boasting about their fourth industrial revolution. It's making progress, apparently. And they're using blockchain technology, which will be integrated with central bank digital currencies, to keep track of everything we do. But it's all to save the planet, of course.
Charles's official website announced on the 3rd of June 2020. Today, through His Royal Highness's Sustainable Markets Initiative and the World Economic Forum, the Prince of Wales launched a new global initiative, the Great Reset. And a royal tweet declared, "The Great Reset initiative is designed to ensure businesses and communities build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
Build back better.
Build it back better.
Build it back better.
Build back better.
Build back.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
Build back better.
Some would say to build back better.
By putting sustainable business practices at the heart of their operations as they begin to recover from the coronavirus pandemic.
We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis.
Big deal, who cares? Well, it is a big deal once you understand that this is all about total control.
We must use all the levers we have at our disposal.
Not only of governments,
knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
We all have a part to play.
But ultimately of your way of life. On the same day as Prince Charles made this announcement, the World Economic Forum released a video to mark the launch of the Great Reset 2. In it, Charles stressed that the plan, including green policies that would suffocate business and individual freedoms worldwide, is a matter of urgency.
We simply cannot waste any more time.
He said this would involve net zero carbon emissions and the use of carbon pricing to achieve it.
The time to act is now.
In the wake of the Queen's death recently, Charles announced that he will be stepping back from direct involvement with the Great Reset.
As I take up my new responsibilities, it will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others.
Anybody expecting carbon taxes to be abandoned by the Forum would be in for a rude awakening.
We must integrate natural capital costs into business and financial systems, backed by the regulatory power to enforce them.
As this recent news report highlights,
they advocate increased costs for carbon-intensive activities. These activities are things like transport, construction, electricity and the like. And they also want to reduce demand for certain, quote, unspecified things. I'm guessing they mean the important stuff that I just discussed, that really builds a civilized society. But of course, it could also include, say, meat, air travel, how many children you can have. I mean, who knows how far they want to take this demand reduction in the name of decarbonising the planet. And to top it all off, they want the setting of personal levels of acceptable emissions and a new definition of a fair share of personal emissions.
According to the World Bank, carbon pricing is an instrument that captures the external costs of greenhouse gas emissions, the costs of emissions that the public pays for, such as damage to crops, healthcare costs from heat waves and droughts, and loss of property from flooding and sea level rises, and ties them to their sources through a price, usually in the form of a price on the carbon dioxide emitted. But how exactly do we reconcile two seemingly conflicting ideas? On the one hand, Klaus Schwab's 2030 prediction that you will own nothing and be happy, and on the other, this carbon tax. Taxation means repossessing someone's private property at the point of a gun or threat of jail, so therefore without their consent. But if private property no longer exists, what is the purpose of taxing an individual with no private property rights in order to distribute that revenue to another individual with no private property rights? And the answer, of course, is that the elites aren't speaking about themselves when they say you'll own nothing and be happy. It's all just an elaborate game, a hoax, a scam, a fraud. It's one hilarious joke to them. Even if some kind of neo-feudalistic system has been created, somebody still at the top must own stuff. And the proposed carbon tax hints that a powerful elite will still own all of the property. It's unlikely that the monarch will attend COP27. It's also unlikely that he will abandon his life's work.
There are a lot more important problems than Sri Lanka to worry about.
Like what?
We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless.
During COP27 climate talks later this year, the Terra Carta Action Forum, which is a 10-year recovery plan for the private sector, is due to be unveiled. It's being hosted by the King's Sustainable Markets Initiative. The website of this is visible here, and it contains this extremely Orwellian prospectus or outline of our future. The Terra Carta is a 17-page Earth Charter created by Charles and released on the 11th of January 2021. It says that the fundamental rights and values of nature must be placed at the core of the global economy. It aims to raise and invest £7.3 billion over the next decade. It commits companies and investors to ensuring that their businesses are aligned with preserving the world's biodiversity, protecting 50% of the biosphere by mid-century, and achieving net zero emissions by 2050. In the lead up to the COP26 talks, Charles continued this Terra Carta campaign. Sir Johnny Ive from the Royal College of Art partnered with Charles to host the Terra Carta Design Lab at COP26. The goal was to work with students to create small designs that can make a big impact for the world's transition to a sustainable future. Topics that students addressed during this included reducing greenhouse gases, increasing biodiversity, and supporting environmentally focused economic development for developing countries. According to the Sustainable Markets Initiative website, the lab was made possible through the support of the Sustainable Markets Initiative partners, which are the Royal College of Art, the Climate Pledge, Octopus Energy, and Bank of America. The Climate Pledge was co-founded by Amazon and Global Optimism in 2019. Global Optimism was co-founded by Christiana Figueres and Tom Riffitt-Carnac after leaving their employment at the United Nations in 2016. They were both involved in the process that secured the Paris Agreement on climate change. One of the 4 winners of the Terra Carta Design Lab was ZELP for designing a wearable device for cattle to neutralize methane emissions in real time. And get this, Jacinta Ardern of New Zealand talked about this recently and has proposed introducing a tax on cow methane expulsions. I'm not even making this up. Here she is talking about it.
It's key to us that what we do is workable, that it's pragmatic, that it can be introduced in a timely way, and that it will actually bring down our emissions.
With twice as many cattle and 5 times the number of sheep to people, meaning more than half of the country's greenhouse gases comes from farms. In New Zealand, methane emissions count for 97% of total agricultural emissions.
The Sustainable Markets Initiative claims that 1.6 billion cattle, each exhaling 400 litres of methane per day, are one of the single leading causes of global warming. This claim has been refuted by many.
Grass takes up carbon from the air by photosynthesis. Then cow eat that plant and its carbon, and in the cow, the carbon is turned into methane, which is carbon and 4 hydrogens, CH4. Methane is then released into the air when the cow burps. Then in about 10 or 12 years, it's broken down into water and carbon dioxide. Carbon is then again taken from the atmosphere by the plant, and the cow eats the plant, and so on. What this means is that the cow is not adding new carbon to the atmosphere. The methane it emits is made out of the carbon the grass got from the air in the first place. What this cycle means is that if you maintain the same amount of cows, they won't add additional warming to the earth. And over the past 20 years, the number of cows in the United States has mostly remained the same. Ruminants adding methane to the environment is not anything new at all. A 2011 study estimated that hundreds of years ago, before the Europeans settled the United States, 50 million wild bison, as well as elk and deer, produce an amount of methane equal to 86% of that of present-day farmed animals' methane emissions.
It makes ZELP's designers look more than a little bit insane, but they won this prize, and this is the nature of the lunacy that has befallen every possible facet and aspect of the climate zealotry which is now encamping our lives.
I will be convening a broad range of industry and issue roundtables, including, but not limited to, aviation, water, carbon capture and storage, shipping, forestry.
Warren Buffett famously said, "We get a tax credit if we build a lot of wind farms. That's the only reason to build them. They don't make sense without the tax credit."
Plastics, financing, digital technology, the bioeconomy, nature-based solutions, renewable energy, battery storage, electric vehicles, fisheries, integrated healthcare, cement, steel, traceability and labelling, and agriculture, at the end of which I shall probably be dead.
No discernible facet of your existence can ever possibly hope to escape the meddling tentacles of His Majesty's climate emergency power grab. You might say he has good intentions. It still doesn't excuse terrible ideas. Every dictator throughout history claimed to have noble motives.
The only way that you can give yourself the idea that you get to be planner is ultimately you think you're better than other people. You think your choice, your judgment overrides mine. And I don't think that's a defensible position. I think I'm in no position to want to force anybody ever. I will never want to force anybody to do anything they don't want. The Keynesian perspective, the central planning perspective is unlike physics, which is let's force a bunch of particles to sit in a lab so that we can study them. In economics, you're forcing people to do things. Let's stop these people from doing this job because it's bad for the economy, and let's get them to do that job. Let's force them to pay this price. Let's tax them this much. Let's prevent them from using gold as money and force them to use our credit as money. So it has to rely on coercion. There's no central planning without coercion. And coercion is a crime, in my opinion. There's no way that it is justifiable morally or ethically.
It isn't appropriate to tax or take from people ceaselessly or subjugate them. It's not appropriate to coerce or attempt to manipulate people's purchasing decisions on the basis of what you consider to be moral or virtuous or appropriate for them. And here we have Charles appearing recently on the National TV Awards show in the UK, singing the praises of a long-running soap opera named Emmerdale. This may have been the moment I knew the monarchy was doomed.
What makes Emmerdale so special is that it has kept true to the vision of its original writer, Kevin Lafan, who wanted to demonstrate that farming is not just a job, it's a whole way of life. I'm also heartened by the production team's efforts off-screen. Their ambition to achieve net zero emissions by 2030 has already made Emmerdale one of the first British programmes to be awarded Albert certification, recognising its efforts to reduce the environmental impact of its production process and to create content that stresses the importance of establishing a sustainable future. So it is only right that the National Television Awards acknowledge the enormous contribution Emmerdale has made, and I hope those watching will join me in sending our warmest congratulations on its 50th anniversary and wishing it an equally successful future.
Charles thinks there are too many people in the world. His 2016 Oxford speech entitled Islam and the Environment made that clear. He views the global population growing by as many as 60 million people per year as being an absolute catastrophe. Elon Musk and Jordan Peterson think the opposite. Charles's view was passed down to him by his father Philip, whose sincerest wish was to be reincarnated as a deadly virus in order to kill humans. Philip once called cannibalism a radical but realistic solution to the problem of overpopulation. Prince William shares his father and grandfather's views, perhaps unsurprisingly, and has given speeches as well, lamenting the excessive and growing global population. The fact that there seems to be a growing number of childless women over 30 in the West, a collapsing birth rate way below replacement levels, and a steadily declining average family size for several decades seems to be lost on these people. We spoke earlier on about the World Economic Forum, which Charles works closely with, and just in case you hadn't already worked it out, there is no diversity of opinion allowed at the forum when it comes to what the trajectory of global population should be, how this should be addressed, and what the forum wants in the future.
So in the session we just attended here at the Economic Forum, I think there was a sense of relief, actually, in your frankness. You brought up some issues that others are reluctant to bring up.
Always. All the religious groups are against me because I'm talking about population. They want more souls. I want less on the planet.
I should probably be dead. Probably be dead. 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 I should probably be dead.
Now, if you are a conspiracy theorist, which is actually the name the left give to those who can predict the future with remarkable accuracy, you might think this is all happening by design. I mean, the WEF have been upfront about their agenda for us. WEF founder Klaus Schwab even wrote about it in a book entitled The Great Reset. That's where you'll own nothing and be happy. And we do see a global coordination of attacks on our way of life, on our customs, our morals, and our values. Now, these attacks are levied on nation states as well, who oppose this agenda by extraordinary and what I consider to be illegal sanctions of those governments and of individuals residing there. Our Anglosphere leaders, they're meant to be the ones representing the free world. Well, they're also pushing global censorship and global taxation. They are weaponising law enforcement and tax collectors against those who resist. And these same leaders celebrate movements that rely on deceit and destruction and chaos to divide society, while a largely compliant media mostly report only the official interpretation of events. These agents of political change are now so emboldened they will happily lie, and they seem to have no fear of being exposed. And that's why they seem happy to misrepresent everything from war to science, from economics to biology, in order to condition you to actually accept what is unacceptable. Now, these things had been done before our very eyes, and yet most people refuse to see it. So many still labour under the belief that government does what it does for our benefit. But if that were true, would Europe be on the cusp of a financial contagion? Would America be a society divided by racial and identity politics? And if government was so helpful, why would allowing all of us to keep more of the money we earn be deemed so controversial amongst politicians? I mean, surely we're capable of spending our money better than any government can. The truth of the matter is that governments around the world are truly desperate. They've made such a mess of things that we're actually on the brink of ruin. And that's why they want these magnificent distractions that I spoke of earlier. They're hoping the more you focus on the light at the end of the tunnel, that you won't see the train that's heading your way.